Today, May 4th, 2024, marks several notable dates for me. I am JTG. Today is, of course, Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. Read that out loud, or say that out loud. Now recall the Star Wars trope quote, "May the Force be with you, may the 4th be with you." That probably required some explanation to the Sith out there among you. Your day is May 6th, or they say, the Revenge of the 6th. May 4th is also the anniversary of the death of my late father on May 4th, 2015, 9 years ago. That is one of the pivotal key dates of my life. And those of you who have been following me for a while may recall what I went through back then and what I've been through since, and will understand why Dad's passing was so traumatic and echoes to this day. I still have much unresolved grief from his passing, and I've written extensively about Dad and spoken extensively about Dad, and I'll do so again someday. But there is another May 4th that overwhelms everything else, as it left not only the psychological trauma, but physical trauma as well. May 4th, 1994, 30 years ago today, was the date I had the mutilating surgery that saved my life from colon cancer, and was the date that my life changed drastically forever. On that grim date, I had a surgical procedure called a permanent colostomy. My rectum was removed, and my large intestine was redirected to a new hole in my belly. The medical term for this extra hole is stoma. For the last 30 years, I've had to glue a plastic bag to my belly to collect feces. I have no control over when the fecal flow occurs, and multiple times over the years, I've had some embarrassing incidences. The surgery took place only a few weeks after my mother had died of lung cancer. I had been with her almost constantly, almost every day, for the previous 8 months, the last 8 months of her life. I kept an audio recorder, cassette recorder with me at the time, and I was recording her talking, telling me stories about her life, in order to write her life story, a biography. I still have those cassettes, and I still need to digitize them and transcribe them. When I asked Mom what I should name her story, she said, "The Little Train That Could." This is because when she was a little girl, she was often abandoned by her rather terrible parents. And she was left alone, and she had a lot of strife, and she used to say to herself, like in the storybook Train that's climbing up the mountain, "I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. I know I can, I know I can, I know I can." So after Mom died, I had a lot of mental trauma, and that I did not have the opportunity to resolve before I myself was diagnosed with colon cancer several weeks after her funeral. I never had the chance to even begin to get over my mother's death before I was facing my own death. I'd been an engineering student at Cal Poly University in San Luis Obispo as my mother's health declined. Since I knew the kind of cancer my mother had from talking to her doctor, I decided to enroll in a class called Biology of Cancer. It was a pre-med elective class for future doctors. In that course, we studied a large number of different cancers, including my mother's specific type of cancer, large cell lung cancer. And it was from this course that I learned how serious my mother's condition was and how little time she had left. I also learned about my then undiagnosed colon cancer in that cancer class. I learned that the 5-year survival rate of patients with my kind of cancer at that stage was only 10%. Or to put it another way, there was a 90% chance I'd be dead within 5 years. I tried to tell others in my family about Mom's limited time, but I was not really believed because my family was hugely dysfunctional. When I'd say, Mom doesn't have much time left, the reply was, "You mean you don't want her to have much time left?" As though pointing out the facts of her condition meant that I wanted her to die, or that somehow by talking about the condition meant that I was going to make it happen. If I didn't talk about it, it wouldn't happen. If not for the internet, which was the early days of the internet in those days, I would have been completely isolated. I had been posting frequently in the early 90s on the Usenet, this is pre-social media, at Cal Poly University. First I would post things about life, my thoughts, my philosophy, religion, and more. And I got quite a reputation for the posts that I made. Then when Mom got cancer, I started posting about that, and people started paying a lot of attention as I posted updates on Mom. I started posting regular updates. People would ask me as I was walking around campus, "How's your mother doing?" And so I started posting because so many people were asking, so instead of repeating myself over and over, I just posted. And I kept doing that right up until till the day she died, the morning she died. Mom tended to be a night owl and was often away at night when everyone else in the family was asleep. And I, knowing that there would, what I called, no more last chances for last chances, stayed up with her every night and slept most days. And this got me criticized by my family as being lazy because you're sleeping all day. Like, yes, but I was up all night. Oh, you're still sleeping all day. Dysfunctional, like I said. I slept as little as possible because I did not want to be asleep at the end. Yet, I was asleep at the end. At about 9 a.m. in that March morning, 1994, I was asleep in bed, having only fallen asleep a couple of hours earlier after spending the night awake with Mom. Suddenly the bedroom door flew open, and my brother ran in and said something like, "There's something happening with Mom." I jumped out of bed and ran into my parents' bedroom. My sister was on the bed with my mother and screaming holding my mother and screaming over and over, "She's not breathing, she's not breathing, she's not breathing." I called the hospice and they sent somebody out to collect the body. It took forever, it seemed, for someone to show up, like more than an hour. Everyone else left the house. They left the room, they left the house. I stayed in the bedroom next to Mom's body until they arrived, until I watched them take her away. Put her in the body bag, put her on the gurney, take her out to the hearse and drive away. I think my sister may have come back at that time. I have some vague memory of that. So, funeral happened, and a few weeks after that, I was diagnosed with my own colon cancer. And when I posted in the same Usenet news groups that I'd been posting about my mother, my initial reaction was disbelief. I mean, no, you don't have cancer, was one response. Another one was, are you joking? Like, I would joke about something like that? I had to double and triple down that yes, I indeed have cancer. It wasn't a joke. I don't know why someone would think I would joke, but in retrospect, that's just kind of bizarre. Maybe they couldn't believe that I was having so much bad luck. On top of that, my family was pretty much in denial about my circumstances because, I was still up walking around. So, obviously I was exaggerating or pulling some kind of con, despite the fact that my surgeon was preparing for surgery. I had everyone. My father was all criticizing me constantly at that time. It was really stressful. I spent the next couple of weeks exercising as much as I could to try to get ready for the surgery. I walking every day as much as I could. I went to the swimming pool and I swam laps, and that probably helped me recover. The day I went in for surgery, I posted on Usenet about my going in, and because many people were following my progress at Cal Poly. I understand somebody from Cal Poly, I don't know, called the hospital, I think, asking how I was doing, and they posted, that I survived. I remember waking up from the surgery. I was on the table, gurney, being wheeled through the hospital hallway. They just finished the surgery. Been a complex 9-hour procedure. I started thrashing involuntarily so much that there were nurses holding down my arms as legs as I bounced around. I remember they were telling me to stop and relax, but my body had just taken over and was completely unresponsive to my will. Then I heard the words that changed my life as the surgeon whispered in my ear, I had to give you a permanent colostomy. There had been some small hope that he would only have to take out a small chunk of tumorous intestine, but the placement of this tumor did not allow that to happen, did not allow for that option. When I went in that morning, I knew the dangers that I might not make it out because of my size and my weight, because I was then 404 pounds on the day of the surgery. Right now I'm about 330. So I weigh much less than I did. And I remember there was a chance that I wouldn't ever wake up. I would either die in surgery or soon afterwards. So when I went in and they were giving me anesthetic, I remember one of my last thoughts is, this could be my last thought ever. It was very nearly a too late situation. The tumor was only millimeters from my hip bone, and it wasn't certain that it hadn't spread to my bones. I'd been having symptoms of the cancer, blood-soaked underwear, for about a year. But I wasn't going to address the situation more than I had until after Mom died. In fact, if she had lived another month or two, the cancer might have spread and I wouldn't be here right now, 30 years later. I had gone to a doctor about a year earlier when the bleeding first started, and he told me it was just hemorrhoids. And when I asked him, could it be cancer? He looked at me like I was a paranoid idiot and said to me in a tone of demeaning, like, people your age just don't get cancer. Like I was just total idiot for even asking the question. And I was 33 at the time. I sometimes have thought about looking him up and telling him just how wrong he was and how severely he ruined my life. Because if he had taken the bleeding seriously, maybe I might have been diagnosed a year earlier, and maybe I might not have had to. I probably would have had to have surgery, but maybe I wouldn't have had the colostomy. A side effect of the surgery has been multiple hernias that have sprung up. And so I've got some really big bulges where my guts hang out, which means I can't really, it makes my belly appear much larger than it would be if I was a normally intact person, because it's literally my guts hanging out, making the bulges. But, some people see me, they just see my clothing, they just see my belly is really big, and it looks weird, even especially since I've been losing so much weight. I mean, it used to be covered up by the fat. Kitty cat. But, as I'm losing the fat, my legs and my chest is getting slimmer, and the belly stays about the same size. So, like I said, according to the cancer class, the odds of my 5-year survival with that kind of cancer was about 10% or 90% chance I'd be dead within 5 years. So I spent the next few years wondering. Everything I did in those next few years, I was doing because I thought it might be the last time I ever did anything. I remember somebody at the time told me, he said, every time you see a bump or a pain, strange pain, you're going to be wondering. And I did. I wondered every time I got a different bump, every time there was a slight off in my blood tests, or my, something showed up. There's a couple of times when things showed up in my liver, and they turned out not to be cancer, but, there was a couple of times when I was wondering, okay, is that the sign of the end time? And one factor at that time was a few months after my surgery, I joined a cancer support group, and there I met another colon cancer patient. He had the same cancer, in almost the same location, the same surgery, but it was 5 years earlier, and he had a different kind of chemotherapy. And for several years he thought he was okay, but then it came back. And he was in his end stages when I met him at the cancer support group, and he told me, people like you are going to live because people like me died. Meaning that medical science would have learned from him, people like him, what not to do. In other words, the chemotherapy he got wasn't effective. And he died a few months later. And that really affected me at the time. And one of the great regrets of my life is I didn't write his name down, so I don't remember his name. So the next few years was living to die. And then about year 4, I started allowing myself to think, maybe I am going to make it after all. Like I said, I had a different kind of chemotherapy, different drugs, different therapies. And I started considering I might survive. I mean, I still wondered for many years, even after the 5th year, is it going to come back? Now, at year 30, if I get a cancer, it'll be a new one. It won't be colon. Well, if I get a colon cancer, it'll be a new cancer. One thing about it, a lot of people in my life have basically claimed that because I didn't die, I was never in any danger. I was either hypochondriac, or I was lying about the whole situation, or trying to get attention, or something. I was just exaggerating. And, why? Oh, attention, some vague and unspecified sinister reasons. That's in spite of all the mutilation I had. In fact, a few weeks after my surgery, while my surgical wounds were still weeping red blood and yellow pus, and I could barely even stand up, one of my family screamed at me, "Quit faking it and get a job!" My colostomy has been a constant hidden presence in my life. To others, I may appear to be mostly normal, but under my clothing, I'm mutilated. Every so often, I start to feel normal, but then I fill up the pouch and I'm reminded I'm not normal. One factor the colostomy has affected has been my dating life. There were several times when a relationship got to the stage where I needed to reveal I had a colostomy. Somehow, always the relationships faded at that point. Sometimes they would just ghost me. But sometimes they'd be blunt. I remember one woman who was particularly obnoxiously blunt when she told me, "Intelligent women only date healthy men." It's probably a good thing she's long departed my life. I have survived these 30 years, obviously, or you would not be watching me say this, or have any idea who I am. My survival I bring down to the fact that if there was a good time to get colon cancer, 1994 was it. The statistics of 90% mortality over a 5-year period was correct. But that was based upon the old standard, the drugs that they were using at the time, the sort of treatment that my associate went through. And so I guess I was correct to believe that things wouldn't have changed that much, but they apparently did. So, I survived, whereas people a few years earlier did not. So, and I was also fortunate that I had a very good surgeon who was willing to take the time to, he ordered a special table that could handle someone of my size, 400 pounds. The way I put it at the time, I'm lucky if you ever watched MASH, I'm lucky I had a BJ Honeycutt and not what's the name of that bad doctor? There's the bad doctor. But anyway, I had a good doctor, good surgeon, not a bad surgeon. So, I went into the hospital. I had printed out all the writing I had at the time on a dot matrix printer, my autobiography, which was not very big at the time, all the writings I could print out, and gave them to my father. He promptly lost them. So if I'd died, everything I'd had would have disappeared. Because he saw no value in my writing. He thought everything I did was crap. He always wanted to throw everything away. Now, 30 years on, it's difficult to remember when I was intact. Being alert for an unexpected fecal flow is a constant background buzz in my brain. I have to take great care to make sure the appliance is secure and not leaking gas or worse, fluid. And sometimes even a new pouch isn't sealed. I mean, there's quality control issues, and sometimes a brand new pouch, plastic pouch, will leak. And so sometimes the smell can be quite embarrassing. I've been in places where I think, oh no, there goes the leak, because, I'll do what I call a pseudo fart. I'll put gas into the bag, and there'll be a small hole in it, and the gas will leak out, and the smell is not good. Particularly since I don't have a rectum, one of the functions of the rectum is to absorb fluids and moisture, and that also reduces the amount of odor. So as stinky as a poo might be coming out of a normal person, it's even more stinky when it comes out of me, because it doesn't go through that final processing phase of the going through the rectum, which is it's the last large pouch of the large intestine. And there'll be times when, people will be going, they're looking around, and then they'll look at me like, whoa, and I'm just kind of ignoring them, because, there's nothing I can do about it right now. It can be embarrassing, but, I'm usually pretty good about being able to take care of it. But, I can't really predict when I'm going to get a bad bag. I have to be careful when the cat jumps on me and starts kneading me to make sure that they don't put their claws through my pants and into the bag. Ooh, coughing. Allergies going on right now. So, 30 years on, I've been long thinking I need to expand and write my autobiography. My friend Julie has been telling me for a long time the secret to my wealth and fame is to write my life story. She thinks about it in terms of, at least I think initially she was thinking about book sales, and that may be part of it, but, I think people knowing who I am would be helpful in my life. And this is part of that. And although I don't have any children, and at this point almost certainly probably never will, at least have direct children. I mean, I do have my nieces and nephews. And my cousins. So, maybe they'll be interested in this someday. What was Uncle James like? Life can change in a moment. You're going along and you think everything is great, and then you get that news. Or a bolt from the blue. A piece of the space station crashes through your roof and conks you in the noggin. Still, I've survived 30 years with this thing. And, I've had many health issues since. I've had pneumonia. I've had kidney issues. I've had diabetes. I had multiple infections, cardiac issues. I've had a stent put in. I have a condition called arterial sclerosis, which means I've got a heart valve that's getting clogged up with calcium deposits and will require surgery probably in the next 2 to 5 years. Could be plus or minus. I've been losing a lot of weight. I have to get down below 250 before my surgeon will consider anything other than an emergency surgery. And he tells me that he thinks that if he had to do an emergency surgery right now, I would probably die. So, I've lost a huge amount of weight lately. And I've got a huge amount of weight more going. My diabetes is under control. Almost under control. My A1C was 7.4, which is high, but it's not the 14 it was a few years back. I could go on, but I think I'll end this for now. And I'll expand upon this and other things later. Please feel free to ask for questions or clarification. Your feedback will help me expand on this, because maybe I'm not clear about some things, or you wonder why something is like, it'll help me expand this and clarify this for when I write my biography, because this will be a significant part of the chapter, although not the entire book, because I have so much else in my life. And, I'm 64. When I get older, losing my hair, many years from now, will you still be sending me a Valentine? Birthday greetings, bottle of wine. Oops, thunk. There goes the key. So I'm 64. And, I've had a long saying joke that I'm going to celebrate my 101st birthday as my ultimate bucket list, along with climbing Mount Erebus, which is the tallest volcano. I want to be the oldest person to ever climb Mount Erebus, which is the tallest volcano in Antarctica. And I believe at this point, unless somebody else has done it, the record is a 92-year-old man. So I'll have to look up what year that'll be. So I'll do it at 93. And I used, for a long time that was my kind of my joking thing. But now, lately I've been feeling a little better. Maybe making it to 101 is not as foolish a dream as I thought. Climbing Mount Erebus may still not be a factor. I may not be able to ever do that, but maybe I can live long enough. And if not, as they say, I plan to live forever or die trying. So far, so good. Or another way to put it, some people say they're going to live on through their works. I plan to live on by not dying. Okay, that's enough humor. So if you've been listening through all that, thank you. And please support me on my Patreon, because I've been a substitute teacher the last few years. I do not believe I can keep doing that much longer. It's a very stressful, physically demanding job, and it's draining my health. So if you can chip in even $5, $10 a month on Patreon, that would be helpful, and check for the link down below. Okay, that's all.